Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you very much for joining me here today. Today we're taking a look at Cartesi, which is CTSI. This is a fan favorite for my community, so thank you all very much for recommending that I cover this, my patrons, and of course my Telegram community. So first of all, if you're new to the channel, just know this is not financial advice. This is for educational purposes only. You should always do your own research. Just know I have years of trading experience, and my goal is to help you become a better trader. I want to teach you to trade for a lifetime, not just for one day. So I typically try to educate you and help you understand best practice along the way. Okay. Now, if you would like to learn less and essentially just get all the answers, then feel free to reference my Signal group through my Patreon account. That's the link in the description below. I send 3 to 5 signals per week. Currently, we're hovering over a 90% success rate. We do have an open position currently with Ethereum. So we'll take a look at that perhaps later, but for now, feel free to reference that in your own time. Also join my Telegram community if you'd like, so we got a really good group of folks there as well. You can learn a lot there, you can sponge, and essentially there's no cost there, right? So check that out if you'd like. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right to it. All right, folks, let's go ahead and take a look at Cartesi, which is CTSI. And before we do, if you're new to the channel, we always look at Bitcoin and Ethereum first. Just so we can get a baseline on the market, we know exactly what's going on outside of this coin that we're looking at, so we can make a better, more well-informed decision. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, first of all, we look at the 4-hour chart. It's the best time frame to get perspective in a short amount of time without going everywhere or in detail. We know quickly by looking at the 4-hour chart what's going on. So that's why I prefer to use that, because the simple moving averages that I utilize, the 200 and the 50, work the most effectively, the best, because other whales, bots, whatever the case is that's trading and controlling the market, they're the ones using these indicators. So you got to you can't beat them, you got to join them, right? That being said, the 50 is this this orange line here, and the purple line is the 200. So the 50-day moving average right now was tested 5 times here recently, 6 times. So in the last 24 hours, it tested that resistance level and rejected every single time. It drove the price down again, but it might push back up to try again. That'd be great, because the more times you test a resistance level, the more often it's going to be broken. Same thing as kicking a door down. I don't know if you have experience kicking doors down, but when you do kick the dang door down, the first time is always pretty resilient, right? And it gets weaker over time. Imagine that when you're trying to break through a resistance or support. Okay. Furthermore, we got the 200 as well. That is working as a resistance. Last time it was tested was on the 4th of July. So on Independence Day, we created no independence for Bitcoin and got rejected and shot back down. Okay. So there was basically 20 hours there it was rejected, and that's the end of that. So to clarify, big picture also, there's a support level at 30,000, in a less significant support at 31,000, 36,500 is the most recent resistance, as well as the previous, 42,000. That's kind of the bigger one there. We're hoping to get to that point again eventually someday. It would be nice. We'll see what happens, but that is essentially where we're at with Bitcoin. Moving on to Ethereum, very similar scenario here, only less enjoyable. I don't know how else to describe it, but Ethereum ramped up really good back here again a second time, but it kind of kept getting rejected here recently in the 23 to 2400 range, and even though it broke through the 200, it significantly lost that support. So it just broke way down. That's because of the news that happened with Bitcoin, unfortunately, on the 7th. We did have that more China news, I guess, is the best way to describe it, just to easily summarize it. That caused the price to come down, and Ethereum, of course, is no longer independent of Bitcoin, which it has done well in the past before without Bitcoin. But in this scenario here, of course, it's very reliant on it, just based on the fact that ever since we've gone sideways with the Bitcoin, Ethereum's been almost following suit. It's a pretty close scenario. It does break free in some cases, but it's also very much controlled by Bitcoin. And furthermore, too, we do have a golden cross here that just occurred. That's not a big deal, honestly, because the fact that Ethereum is kind of, again, self-reliant on Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin goes south, that means nothing. If Bitcoin increases, then sure, we'll see that increase too. But I wouldn't put a lot of weight into this based on the fact that the 50 is moving upwards. Keep in mind the 50 should be underneath the price action to help it push through the 200. Right now, it's just kind of working as a resistance number 2. Okay, so not that big of a deal. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at Cartesi. And CTSI is a pretty interesting one. I've got a good group of folks. In fact, it's odd in the sense that Cartesi actually allows for people to actually using it now as currency. In other words, I mean, obviously you can use that with anything, right? But a lot of larger companies are actually getting Cartesi as a main form of payment. So a lot of them accept Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Cartesi. In fact, I actually have one of my subscribers, Louis, from Louis Lures. He actually does that. He uses Cartesi more specifically for his customers through his online service. I actually have it pulled up here because that just reminded me because I was looking at it earlier. So we got Team Louis here, of course, with the actual they accept Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Cartesi. So yeah, check that out in your own time, of course, if you're an angler, but if you're not, that's okay too. Just know that Cartesi is a form of payment that people are using and more normalizing now, if you will. So that's partially why we might see that it's kind of a contender, because it's got a lot of functions. So do your own research on the fundamentals, but that is just a little snippet there for you. So moving on to the one-day chart here, let's take a look. And I always like to look at the history, right? Just to quickly glance. If you're new to the channel, I like to look at the Bitcoin sell-offs to kind of quickly identify what is going on with Cartesi. So in this case here, if we look back at April 17th, that was the first major sell-off in Bitcoin. Not much action there. The second sell-off on the 22nd, yes, it was impacted. It jumped up on the 25th. That's pretty standard. A lot of other coins did that, but it really, really went on a tear here because Bitcoin, keep in mind, was going sideways. In this time frame here, Bitcoin was going pretty much level with the price. It was, 2,000 or 3,000 variants maybe, but it's just staying right in that channel there. Whereas the Cartesi just quickly ramped up on the 8th of May. And what's interesting is 8th of May was the fake news from Elon Musk. I call it fake news. Sure, it's relevant, but pulling Bitcoin out of Tesla, we shouldn't have experienced that much of a reaction, right? It's just a megalomaniac essentially going to town with his tweets, and that's what happened. But the crazy thing about this is the price shot straight up that same day, where the price went straight down for most other coins. Obviously, it had to come back down and retrace to almost 50%, maybe 60% of its original price. That's normal. And then, of course, the big one, May 19th, the day after, the China candle, essentially, it went down and kind of has decreased since then because we've got a lot of indecision in the market, FUD, if you will, fear, uncertainty and doubt, just constant rampant in the market. So everything else pretty much sold off in the last month and a half. That's very normal, very standard. But at this point in time, Cartesi is starting to look like it's making a ramp back up. And what's cool about this is the fact that we've got the 200-day moving average working as a consistent support. So if that continues on, another couple weeks, we'll be at 50, 60 cents eventually, and it'll just continue to work as a support level. Now, that's not a guarantee, of course, but it's a pretty good sign that the price action should be in the 41 to 50 cent range, where it's at kind of right now. So that's just based on the averages. That's what it's telling us. 50-day moving average is coming back down. If the price stays above the 200, then the 50 coming down is not a problem per se. Don't concern yourself with a death cross in this scenario here. That's more relevant with just say Bitcoin and the contenders when they control the market. They're not going to be controlling this type of market per se with a quote unquote death cross. It's just I don't know. I don't put a lot of weight into it. I don't think you should either. It does happen sometimes, but I've seen them go both ways. It's almost never consistent. The RSI is kind of low. Not really much to be said there. It's pretty standard for ever since May 19th for the RSI to be under 50 for a lot of coins on the one-day chart. MACD as well. We don't really see much here. We did see a convergence, of course. That's when our price action increased maybe about 12 days ago, somewhere in that range. But honestly, not much to really note here. Kind of standard one-day chart stuff here. So let's go ahead and take a look at the 4-hour chart. This is more relevant in my opinion because the moving averages work more consistent. And as we can see here, the 50-day moving average was working as a potential resistance here recently in the last, just say 2 days, but it did break through and stay above. It tested the 200 and rejected. So right now we're kind of working ourselves into a channel. It very well could be one of these scenarios where the price just kind of works itself through here and will eventually break out. That's my estimate. That's my guess. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. But commonly you'll see wedge patterns form based on these moving averages, and it should likely increase past that. So I feel like Cartesi is going to ramp up again, but it might need to go sideways for a little bit longer. Moving on to the RSI, we got the RSI upwards of, I don't know, it's in the 60s, so nothing really to note there. Even when it goes above 70, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to sell it. Last time it probably would have been a good indication, but that's because it got rejected by the 200. Okay, same as it did here today. So honestly, the 200 appears to be a pretty strong resistance level, so be aware of that. We did have a convergence recently, which didn't really matter that much. Let's kind of see if that coalesces with the cloud. So let's go ahead and just mark that here. So it's right about Let's find it. So it was right there. So it was 1700. Okay. So we'll just mark that there. See how that pertains to the 1 hour chart. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now and see what's going on. I always like to turn off my moving averages because the simple moving averages are more relevant on larger time frames. I don't feel like the 1 hour chart helps us that much with that. Let's take a look at the cloud here. So this is where the MACD told us we have a buy signal, right? So just before the price came up, that's essentially telling us that there's that convergence. So had you got in here, it would have been obviously pretty awesome. But as you can tell, the price jumped above, retraced back down, stayed in the cloud, and then came above here. So this is a consideration here to note. When you utilize the cloud, oftentimes when it breaks above the cloud, it'll be considered a buy signal. When it's below, it's a sell signal. Okay. So we had the MACD telling us to get in here, and also the Ichimoku cloud jumping in, telling us to jump in here as well. So we got two indicators there. Essentially, they're telling us to get in, and both kind of predicted an increase, right? So just pay attention to that. If you're a swing trader, even day trader, of course, this is relevant. As a swing trader, though, you're going to hold on for a lot longer. These are things you want to pay attention to. Now, moving on to the 15-minute here, let's just quickly identify a couple of things here. And first of all, I don't really utilize the Ichimoku cloud because that's just a 1 hour chart only, personally, for me. In fact, let's go right back to the 1 hour chart because I did forget to look at the TD sequential. This does help us understand market exhaustion. So if we take a look here, we can see that we have the numbers counting up from 1 to 9. So when you see a 9, it's basically an indication of a sell signal because there's going to be a retracement. So we did have that happen. It came back down. So there's a good likelihood that we'll see this go sideways for a little bit longer. It will probably reset here soon and continue to go sideways. But again, I'm really quickly just blazing through this. TD sequential is a good indication oftentimes of market exhaustion. So when you see a 9, it tells you that it's been, the market is overextended at that point and it's probably going to turn around. Coincidentally, we saw a 9 here and it's turning around. It kind of turned around right at the 8, but generally speaking, that's 8 to 9 hours worth of increases from the time frame from before. So in turn, that essentially tells us that there's going to be some exhaustion and it might likely travel sideways soon. Okay, or it could retrace as well, but I don't feel personally that CTSI will retrace all that much. Oftentimes the retracement comes down about 50%, so I'd say best case, or worst case, depending on how you look at it, 45 cents should be the lowest point in which we'll see the price before it goes sideways and increases again. Because it does have a tendency here, if you see this up, down, it is making higher highs and higher lows though. That's the important thing to identify. Higher highs, higher lows, that's a good sign. So looking at the 15 here, let's just quickly turn on the EWAP. EWAP. Sorry, if you're new to the channel, that might be funny. Or no, if you're not new to the channel, that'd be funny. But if you are, you're probably not sure what that meant. In other words, I meant to say EMA and VWAP, because EMA is the exponential moving average. That is the red line here. That is basically telling us that we have, the price when it's above is considered bullish, when it's below it's bearish. It's done a lot of consolidation recently, but if you see this ramp up here, that's a good sign. Basically means that the price is considered to be bullish right now. But the VWAP essentially is just a volume weighted average price. So it takes the volume last 24 hours, expresses it as a price. So we can see this kind of here where the price was below. That's considered it's a resistance level. And when it's above, it's considered a support. So right now we're still above VWAP line, which is nice. The price is going sideways. So if we can get above the EMA line for just say 15 to 30 minutes, we'll be in good shape to consider taking entry. Okay. So I might recommend you wait for a moment to see if the price comes down any further. Again, it might come down to about 45 cents. If it does, no worries. It should bounce off of that time frame there because, again, if you look at all these retracements in the past, every one of them come up and come back down almost 50% of its original increase. Yeah. So they're just things you kind of learn and you pick up on in crypto for the most part. Anytime you have a sharp increase, which is quite common in crypto, there is a retracement, it rarely comes down past 50%. So it'll, just say it goes up 100%, it'll come down 50% of the way, and then, usually go sideways and maybe go back down again, but it really just depends on the overall market, right? So if we can get, just say Bitcoin to keep going sideways or come up and test that 36,500 and break through, then it's going to be open season for Cartesi. But even between now and then, I think you can still, keep getting a little smaller gains here. And I'm probably going to set up some notifications to kind of pay attention to this one here for my signal group, because I do think that CTSI is has really good potential. and there's a strong likelihood it should continue to increase because you see how low it is here in the big picture. You know, its average true range, again, we didn't identify that. It's probably somewhere in the range of 52 to 80 cents. Okay, so with the price being down around 47, there's still some room for growth, and I do feel like it'll continue to come up, and we'll see what happens. But that's generally where we're at there for Cartesi. So if you found benefit, please feel free to like and subscribe. If you would like for some extra help, some extra benefit, I do have a Signal group. I usually mention this in the intro. If I didn't, generally speaking, I always send 3 to 5 signals per week through my Telegram community. So feel free to reference that. That's available through my Patreon, and obviously become a patron if you'd like to show your support. But more importantly, feel free to like and subscribe if you could. That does help grow the channel, so YouTube can recommend this stuff, because unfortunately a lot of the stuff gets swept under the rug. But I do this for my community, and I really all thank you very much for joining me here and supporting me this far. You're all very awesome. Really appreciate you. And I do hope you all have a great rest of your day, morning, evening, good night, whatever the case. Thanks again for joining me. You have a good one. We'll talk to you later. Take care.